Hi everyone, it's Deez. Guess what I'm making today? Orange poppy seed cake. I did a grocery haul in one of my previous videos, and a viewer, I bought an orange, or 3 oranges actually, and I mentioned on the video that I may or may not make an orange cake. So a viewer said she would like, or they would like to have me maybe make a cake as a video. So I'm going to try and attempt to be as relaxing as I can for you. It's a little bit hard in the kitchen. I'm the type of cook that just likes to bang around like the old Whirlpool mums that use all the kitchen and household appliances really roughly. So anyway, I have all the ingredients here in front of me. So I'm going to move the camera, reposition that down so that you can see. Just before I do that, I'll just go through the ingredients just in case one of you might like to make this. So this is a recipe that I've had for years. I keep it in a folder. Since my early 20s I've just collected recipes, and I've been through the folder quite a few times and try and just keep things that I make that are favourites. So this is one of them, and hubby loves any type of citrus cake. So here we go. Orange poppy seed cake. So you need 1 orange, 125 grams of unsalted butter. I've just used salted butter, so I don't think that matters. 3/4 of a cup of caster sugar, 2 eggs, a tablespoon of poppy seeds, 1.5 cups of self-raising flour, 1/4 of a cup of fresh milk. Well, you wouldn't want off milk, would you? Now the frosting is the cream cheese frosting, although you don't have to do that obviously. Sometimes I like to chop and change recipes, so sometimes I just add my own touch to it, so that doesn't really matter. But this one calls for the cream cheese, which you need 60 grams, 30 grams of soft butter, and 1.5 cups of icing sugar. I use, I think in the US you call it confectionery sugar or something, but it's the powdered type sugar. Look at this cute little thing with the tongue. I bought this from Aldi a couple of years ago, I think. So this is the soft icing mixture, Merry filled. That's what I'm using. Okay, so I'm going to reposition the camera now so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, so let's begin. So the first thing you need to do is preheat the oven to 180 degrees Celsius. So I'll do that quickly. Now I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but I can write that if I remember in the description. So just if I forget and someone wants to know, either Google it yourself or just let me know and I'll put it in there, okay? So then I have to grease a 22 centimetre by 11 centimetre loaf tin and line the base with baking paper. So I have my loaf tin here. I don't normally measure it myself, I just think this is about the same. So I've just got some olive oil spray. I'm just going to lightly spray the base, and that way the baking paper is going to stick to the pan. Okay, so now I'm going to place the paper down, and that way it's not going to stick to the base. And I always overcompensate when I do this. I'm not the neatest person at placing baking paper down on tins. Okay. So that's going to sit there ready. For when the batter goes in. Okay. Next is finely grate the skin of the orange and then juice it. Okay, so I'm going to move this out the way. And bring my orange and the juicer and the grater. Don't need that board a little bit. Okay, so let's grate this orange, get all the rind off, and that's what's going to give it the beautiful orange flavour. So hubby's going to be surprised because he doesn't know I'm making this. Now you don't want to go too deep when you grate, because if you go too deep, it's going to become very bitter, and that's the same for lemons. I love this grater, it's just so much easier than the old-fashioned pyramid-shaped graters, at least for citrus anyway. I think the pyramid graters are good for grating cheese and things like that, and maybe carrots, of course. Now, I think I've just about got every bit that I can get. So I'm just going to take that off. I'm going to have orange fingers. Now I'm just going to rinse this because there's nothing worse than letting this dry and then trying to clean it. So that's that done. I'll put that aside here for now. And now we're going to juice the orange. Just cut it in half. It's a Saturday morning here in Australia. Beautiful autumn, sunny autumn day. And you may hear some dogs in the background and maybe traffic here and there. I just hope that no one starts their mower or their whippersnippers cutting grass and weeds. And still get a bit out of that. Just get as much as you can. And when I'm cooking, I like to make things easy for myself and not be obsessive about it, but just clean up sometimes as I go along. As I said with the grater, just rinse that and it saves you a bit of work later. Just trying to get as much of the juice as I can. Now I'm just going to pop this in the bin. And wash my hands. I'm just going to let the rest of the juice seep through that pulp just for a little bit. Pop that aside. Now I've done that. So now I have to beat the butter and sugar together with an electric beater until pale and creamy. I'm not going to use an electric beater unless it takes me too long, and then I'll have to do that off camera, but I will attempt to do it by hand the old-fashioned way. With my bowl, so I have my 125 grams of butter, and that's been sitting there to room temperature for about an hour. So hopefully that's going to be soft enough, but I don't think it will. And I have my sugar here as well, which was 3/4 of a cup of caster sugar. No, it's still not too soft, but we'll see how we go. Just going to break the butter up a little bit. Maybe it needed a little bit more. Normally I'm naughty and I'll put it in the microwave for a few seconds, but it always ends up melting about at least 1/4 of it. So now, when I was a teenager, this is all we had. We didn't have all the fancy equipment. Had the little hand mixers. So what I'm going to do is just get a little bit of that sugar in there and start mixing it through. When we were learning cooking at school, we used to have to do everything by hand right from scratch. Even making scones was a science at school. You couldn't do one thing wrong. Every step had to be adhered to exactly. Or followed exactly. Does that make sense? Adhered to? That's gluing to. What am I talking about? Okay. It is at 10 minutes to 10 in the morning. I haven't had breakfast yet because if I eat, my belly is going to digest it and make all sorts of funny sounds. So I'm just adding the sugar slowly. the last cake I made was a carrot pineapple cake over Easter. And before that it was a German baked cheesecake. It's starting to soften up a little bit more now. Put that on there so it doesn't make so much noise. You can hear the fan of the oven. That's the oven telling me that it's at heat, at the right temperature. This is quite a big bowl, so it doesn't look like a lot, but it's a good quantity for a cake. It's for a basic cake. I remember when I was young we used to have to use a whisk like this, and we used to have to beat the egg white until peaks form, and your arm would get so tired. So I am grateful for all the appliances these days. You can see it's becoming a little bit more easier. That sugar being distributed through butter. One last bit. Now I was taught to beat this until the butter almost looks white, very pale, not white but very pale. At the moment it's still a dark yellow. Of course with an electric beater it's going to be a lot quicker, but it's just going to make too much noise for an ASMR video. And I'm not going to be too fussy. Imagine cooking in, I don't know, in the 30s, even before that, I'm in the 30s. Okay, that's going to do, and now I'm going to add the eggs a bit at a time. So I'll break one open, have 2 eggs, and I'll have this little whisk, and I'll whisk that first before I add that to the butter. Actually, I'll break both of them in there and whisk them both together and save some time. And I'm just reading this cake. You have to bake it for 50 minutes until golden, but I don't think it's going to take 50 minutes. I have a fan forced oven and I will check it after about 25 minutes and then 5-minute intervals after that. But you all know your own ovens, so I'm going to rinse that. Rinse the whisk. Now, I'm just going to add this slowly, a bit at a time. And that's another reason why you keep your eggs and your butter out to room temperature. Otherwise it can curdle, which has happened to me quite often making cakes because I'm impatient. In Australia, we tend to keep our eggs in the fridge because it can get hot and the eggs can go off a lot quicker. So now that's getting a really nice consistency. Scrape a spoon. There's always a little bit that likes to stick to the spoon and not get mixed through properly. Don't want to add too much egg at once. It's different if you have an electric mixer, of course, if you're doing it by hand. Just at this point, I'll put the bowl down because it is heavy. I'm just going to scrape down the sides. It looks like. Now one last stir through with a little bit of egg left. I'm going to rinse that. Okay, so that's come together quite nicely. Okay, now's the fun bit. Stirring in the poppy seeds and the orange rind. Orange rind and the poppy seeds. It's 1 tablespoon of poppy seeds. So I have my measuring spoon here. And 1 tablespoon. Actually, I'm going to leave it about 3/4 of a tablespoon because just it seems like a lot to me, and I want the poppy seeds to enhance the cake, not overpower it. So I can always add more once I've stirred it through, but look at that, it looks like it's quite enough. Yes. I can smell it. The citrus. Okay, so now is folding in the flour until it's well combined, and then we add the milk. So now this is sifted flour. It doesn't call for sifted flour. But I always sift mine, so I'm just going to stir that through just a little bit at a time. I love cake batter. When I was a kid and Mum used to make cakes, we used to always fight over the spoon, the main spoon, and then the rest of us would get a little metal spoon and just take from the bowl. These days they don't suggest you do that because of the raw egg. But we never got sick from that. So as you go, you can add a little bit more at a time. You just start off small and work your way up. Look at that batter. Yum. If it becomes too dry, you can always add a little bit of milk. You're supposed to stir all the flour in first, but if it gets to the point where it's not going to take in any more flour, you can always start adding your milk a little bit early. Just enough so that you can mix more flour to it. It's getting tougher to stir now. My voice sounds a little bit husky. I still have a cold. One last bit. Oh, wouldn't be a cooking show unless I made a mess. This is why you wear aprons, people. This is why you wear aprons. Scrape down the sides again, make sure you've got all that goodness incorporated. There we go. Now I'm going to add the milk, which is a 1/4 cup. to add so 1/4 cup of milk and a bit of the orange juice and 1/4 cup of the orange juice. Right. So it's 1/2 cup of fluid. Don't know if I've got a 1/4 cup. Yes, I do, and I have some left for the icing, which doesn't call for that. Maybe I won't use it. Anyway, we'll see. I probably should have added this bit at a time too, but that's just me. This is going to be beautiful moist cake, I can tell. Oh, and the smell of the orange. Let me put that milk back in the fridge. So now I have the spoon into the prepared tin, and it says bake for 50 minutes until golden, test with a skewer, rest in the tin for 5 minutes and then turn out onto a wire rack to cool completely before icing. As I said, I'm not going to cook this for 50 minutes because I know by experience and the size of the tin that I'm using, it's not going to need that. So I'm going to let it bake for 25 to 30 minutes maybe, and we'll definitely check at the 25-minute mark and just see how it goes. And when I say check, I mean through the window. You don't want to open the oven door too early, otherwise the whole cake's going to sink if it's not baked properly. So I've done that plenty of times. Okay, so our cake is ready, our batter is ready for the tin. So I'm going to transfer that over. And just get every last bit of that batter because you've worked hard for it. My kids used to love licking the spoons too. Just flattening that, levelling it out a little bit, making sure the batter's tucked right into those corners. The paper didn't quite come up high enough on this side, but it should be fine. this point I normally give it a good few knocks to the bench just to make sure that the tin has been filled out properly. So that's the cake ready to be baked. So I'm going to bake this, and let's put it in the oven first, and I'll check the time. So it's 10:15, so I'm going to check that at about 20 minutes to 11. And while the cake is baking, we're going to make the icing. So I have the icing sugar ready, but silly me, I'm going to soften the icing, or the butter and the cream cheese, the smooth cream cheese. It's a little bit softer, and so that is 30 grams of butter, so not a lot of butter, and 60 grams of the cream cheese. So I'm just guessing a couple of tablespoons, because that's the sort of cook I am. I eyeball a lot of it. Just going to incorporate that. Mix it well through the butter. Now, I guess you could use orange essence, but I'm going to put in the slightest amount of this remainder, the juice. If you use too much, it just means you're going to have to use a lot more icing sugar, so just be careful. I could have left some of the grated rind as well. Just going to put a little bit more. So I think that was probably about a teaspoon all up. And hopefully that'll give it a lovely taste. So now I'm going to sift the icing sugar. And you know what icing sugar's like if you've used it before. It seems like you're not going to combine everything through, but sometimes it just takes time. You just got to work at it. And if all else fails and it doesn't want to mix through, you just add a little bit more liquid to it, whether it be milk or a little bit of juice or essence, although you don't want to add too much essence. Just adding a little bit more. I do want that orange flavour for the icing, so consistency, and there's just a little bit of the icing sugar left, so I'll use it all up. Squash down those hard bits. I don't want to go through the sieve. Okay, last bit of stirring. Now I'm going to put this in a separate bowl. Put some Glad wrap over it. I could refrigerate it and take it out about half an hour before you ice the cake. And that's perfect consistency. In fact, I'm not going to get another bowl, it can stay in this bowl. I'm just making more work for myself. And of course I'll give it a good stir before I start icing the cake. Gonna have a taste of it. Lovely. You can taste the orange, but it's not overwhelming, so that's great. I'm happy with that. I'm just going to cover that with some cling wrap. And I'm going to be back when the cake is baked and we're going to ice the cake. So we'll see you soon. Okay, so we are back. This is the cake. It ended up taking 40 minutes all up. At the 30-minute mark, I checked it at 25 minutes and it didn't seem brown enough, so I didn't want to open it. But at the 30-minute mark, I opened it to check. I have my little cake tester. You can use a skewer or anything that's pokey like that. And I did test it in the middle and it sunk slightly, so I quickly closed the door, and because it's already was quite brown, I turned the temperature down to 170 degrees Celsius instead of 180 degrees Celsius, and just let it cook for another 20 minutes, just watching through the window of the oven and making sure that it wasn't over browning. So that's it, other than a slight, you can see it sunk slightly. I just opened that door a little bit too early, but never mind, that happens to me from time to time. And I just left it in the tin to cool down for 5 minutes and then just lifted it up with the paper. And now it's ready to transfer to the dish. So I'll just move this out the way. That's a great thing with baking paper, it just comes right off. You don't have to worry about breaking the cake, trying to bang it out of the tin. Okay, so we are ready to ice it. Now I've prepared this earlier with you and it's all ready to go. Now this is, you can just feel a tiny bit of warmth to it. The outside's quite cool, so it should be ready. Do wait till it's room temperature because otherwise the icing will melt. I've had that happen to me before too. Being impatient, but this is just a slight warmness in the centre, just only tepid, so it should be fine. And I'm going to put that in the refrigerator. I should Give it a little bit of a stir. So it's taken a good hour for the cake to cool down. Okay, so let's put this icing on. Now, of course, if you didn't like the icing this consistency, you wanted it a little bit thicker, you could always add more icing and sugar to it. But I just love the cream cheese icing on cakes. Now, I'm not going to worry about doing the sides. Let's bring that right to the edge. I actually took a walk while this cake was cooling. I took a walk to the local supermarket and bought some tea and coconut water. It was a nice autumn day to have a walk. So that's it. I think that would do. Or that will do, I should say. So if you wanted to, you could break some walnuts on the top of that. Or finely chop some orange rind, just not too much because it can be overpowering. So I'm going to zoom in to cut this cake so you can see. Now I'm using a serrated edge, just a slight serrated edge, because it is very fresh. So ideally you'd want it at least to, you know, sit for another couple of hours. But I wanted to see what the middle was like. So here it is. You can see the poppy seeds, and you can see the orange grated rind, and I'll give you a close-up look at the cake, the rest of the cake. Very yummy. Let's have a taste. Oh, I've got a bit of icing on my thumb. Now, I don't like so much the ends of the cake, I like the soft bits, but I'm going to taste this. Then I'm going to make a cup of tea and sit and eat the rest. Very nice. It's a nice balance, not too dry and not over moist. If you want a very moist cake, you make a pineapple cake or a banana cake, something like that. But that is beautiful. Hopefully hubby will like this when he comes home. It'll be a nice surprise for him. So thanks for watching everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was relaxing for you. It is a little difficult to make cooking videos or baking videos more suited for ASMR, but I tend to like the old style ASMR where you get ASMR and relaxed just from watching people do everyday things. Yeah. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. That'll help me out greatly. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And I hope to see you back at my channel again another time. Thanks for watching everyone. Take care and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.